Hello everybody, welcome back to the Janus Project, welcome to KSP POV, and welcome to episode 1 of our EVE program. Today we are going to take this SSTO, the same one that we had in the last episode, as well as the same one from the Joule program, except this one has a set of canards on it, so hopefully it'll be a little bit more stable. Thankfully, the Joule craft was able to get out and maneuver well enough with it, and I don't think it should have too much of a problem on the atmosphere of Lave, because that atmosphere isn't as thick as Eve's, so the POV crowd is going to have a little bit more of a challenge when dealing with atmospheric flight, but they have the benefit of only needing to go to 2 planets before completing the program and being able to move on, whereas the KXP crowd has to do the Joule 5, but that is for another episode. Today we've got Valentina as mission commander of this flight. In the last episode we tried to take off from the island runway to some failure, and so we decided to not mess around. We're going to just leave from our own KSC out here in the proving grounds in the desert. The one problem is our runway is facing the wrong way. We are facing north, so we will need to bank over east if we want to actually make this any kind of efficiency, so it will be a little bit more of a challenge. We are going to probably end up using more Delta V in order to complete the same goal as the KXP crowd does, so it's interesting when each side gets a little bit of an advantage or of a disadvantage, trying to keep track of who is technically having an easier time. We're going to get our camera set up the way we like it, but only on Valentina's side. The Kerbal to the right of me is actually an engineer, so there's no point in putting any responsibility on her shoulders. So now we've got our 6 jet engines going, spooling up, getting faster, and hopefully we'll be able to get a little bit of lift before we hit that bump in the runway, because even though we have some hovercrafts and it should be able to lift us over it, it still puts us on a pretty wonky trajectory. We can end up crashing ourselves pretty hard, but thankfully we were able to lift clear off and not have a problem. This craft is pretty good. I'm not going to say it's well designed, but it's definitely can handle what we try to throw at it. Turned off our hovercraft because there's no need for that. We may decide to turn it back on if we do the fly above the water technique, where you just fly just mere meters above the water, building up speed until you can pull up. But we don't end up going for that. I think about it during this time, so I want to prepare myself, but once we get there, I'll show you how we handle that. So as we are tilting over, we're actually gaining in altitude, so I don't have any fear that our thrust to weight is not significant enough to take off. I mean, I don't have that fear anyways, because I did test after test after test of this. The crash mod, Kerbal Ramification something simulator, it's just absolutely wonderful, because I want to get this right on the first try. I don't want to keep reverting to flight, if I end up having to quick save and quick reload, then I don't get the opportunity to revert to flight sometimes, revert to VAB, and so then you have to hit the cheat to bring it back. And if I'm testing this and trying to figure out, can you get to Eve's atmosphere, and I do it in a real version, then I get Kerbals get the achievement for visiting Eve and making those milestones and things like that, and it's like, well, no, I was just testing. We're not ready for that yet. So the simulation mod has made me a lot happier in this game, as far as the challenge of doing things for the first time. Like, yeah, during the simulation, I've visited Eve, I've tested this craft in Joule and Lathe and all that, but we didn't get the milestone for it, so I appreciate that. So we are at about kilometer 0.6 above the surface, holding steady, and we are actually gaining speed fairly quickly. We're passing the 700 mark here in a second. There we go. And 700 meters per second is fast enough that I can actually start pulling myself upwards. I've determined that in my testing that 700 is the minimum speed that I need to go in order to start pulling up. And as we see here, I am losing a little bit of speed, but we will quickly be regaining that as we push ourselves higher and higher. I did end up wasting more liquid fuel than the KXP crowd did because I did have to do the banking, and then because of the banking it took me a little bit longer to build up that speed again, whereas they were able to just go straight. So unfortunately we can't actually head to any of the planets after this because we just simply won't have the Delta V right off the bat. I already knew this just during this time in the flight. There's no way that we can get to another moon and refuel ourselves, so we will end up having to refuel in today's mission. Real fast, I'm looking at the intake of the atmospheric air, and I'm seeing that pretty quickly it will be running out, and our jet engines will not be able to provide any thrust. We'll need to switch them over to their closed cycle version, so that means that they're burning liquid fuel instead of the liquid fuel oxidizer that I was doing before, and our ELU engines will be working on the nuclear power. So I'm going to go hit action groups 4 and 5, and that switches the cycle over, and we can see that we're still pushing our apoapsis higher, even though we don't have any access, or we don't have enough access to oxygen to power the jet engines. So our apoapsis was only about 40 kilometers, which is definitely not enough to get to space, but now we are pushing ourselves even higher, and we are going to be able to utilize that fuel that we have. This craft is a lot of compromise. You have to compromise certain engines at certain points in order to manage your Delta V. This space plane just barely scrapes out enough Delta V to go anywhere. But once you get there, you really gotta think on your toes. So our apoapsis is 87.7. I go ahead and open flight computer and execute a node that doesn't exist. I don't exactly know why I decided to rely on that instead of making my own maneuver node, but nonetheless, I get myself pointed there, and thankfully, I think about it early enough that I'm able to save the mission, because if I had just time warped to the node, it would have brought me right back to the atmosphere. It would have been a very sad bunch of Kerbals. But now we have it plotted in, and we are going to be able to automatically handle our burn. We have enough Delta V. I'm going to go ahead and open up the radiators for now. I didn't think about the fact that I wasn't going to need the engine that will require that, but nonetheless, it's good to have. I open up the solar panels as well, keep our electricity going, and it takes no time at all to circularize. 89 by 85, pretty good. So now there's not really much that we have left to do here, because now it's just a matter of getting it refueled, and so we're just going to keep ourselves pointed in the same direction, stable, and on SAS. And then Valentina gets the chance to stretch her legs, head out to the back, and relax for a little bit. She's going to be working hard these next few episodes. The rest of the crew gets to kind of sit back and watch, so she's going to relax for a little bit. And then we're going to head back to the KSC with this little craft that we've designed. Threw it together, really, as you can see. It's not exactly in the best design, but we have Lars Kerman is our pilot. We have 3 engineers on board as well, because I do want to bring some engineers up to the craft. I realized that we had some extra seats on the plane, and so we're going to want the ability, if something goes wrong, if something breaks, or if we need to add something to it, we're going to need a good number of engineers in order to lift heavy objects. So now we have lifted off. I talked straight through it, but we are using the auto ascent feature of the Alcor pod, which is pretty awesome. It just gets yourself to orbit easily. We're going to actually be doing almost all of this refueling mission in an autopilot state, because the success of Valentina and the Space Planes mission, Valentina and the Space Plane, new band name, I called it. But anyways, their mission is depending heavily on this refueling to go correctly, and so we need this to go as smoothly as possible, as efficiently as possible. We need to make sure that when we arrive, we have a full tank of gas for them. We can't leave them even slightly empty. They need every drop of fuel they can get. So in doing so, we're actually going to rely not just on the auto ascent here to get the best, most efficient launch profile, but we're also going to set the space plane as a target. First, we got to go into filters because this doesn't naturally grab planes. I have to turn that on. But we're going to go ahead and set that to a target, and then we are going to utilize the Alcor Pod's pretty awesome auto rendezvous. So as we see here, we got our target data, and then over by our auto ascent, we've got an auto rendezvous, and we execute that maneuver. And so the rest of this trip will be taken care of for us automatically. And then once we arrive, we're going to take over manually and do the docking. So that one works out really well, and then it plots in the next maneuver. But as you see here, we're actually missing some Delta V, and it relies on our RCS to push through. I wasn't paying attention at the moment until just about now, and unfortunately, this did not have the change engine mode on an action group, so I did just switch out and right-click it and staged off our decouplers and side tanks. And so now it is just relying on the fuel that we have stocked up, saved for the craft, 7,000 meters per second Delta V, which should be enough to fill their tanks, but we can't rely too heavily. So now we're just going to kind of blow through the rendezvous process. This is automatically handled, like I mentioned before, but this is essentially the rendezvous process. You're just making small little adjustments here and there, getting your orbit lined up, and then you're waiting until you have an encounter. Then you just keep refining and changing just slightly. As you see on our nav ball, we are changing our relative velocity to the target over and over until we can get it into a small enough number that we are hardly moving, essentially standing still relative to each other. The only difference between this and a manual rendezvous is the amount of flipping around and making new maneuvers and doing it all by hand, but we will be doing more of that. I do enjoy rendezvous. It's a very difficult part of this game, but I actually take a lot of pleasure in being able to do it, so I don't typically like to do the auto rendezvous, but nonetheless. And I had been doing other errands and doing other stuff for so long while I was doing this that I had kind of forgotten that I was in IVA mode, and I opted for the Matt Lown lazy docking method, patent pending, and so I'm out here in third-person mode, just getting myself lined up, twisted around, playing around with docking, and then it's about this time that I realized, oh shoot, I'm supposed to be in first-person mode, so I switch over, grab the docking window, get myself lined up, but before I could do anything, the Matt Lown lazy method of docking is just so freaking efficient. There were so many ways that could have messed up right there, and yet it just worked. So thank you, Matt Lown. Thank you for all that you've done for the community and taught us. But yeah, I shake a fist at thee. Your method is too effective. But no, that was my fault because I should have started that docking procedure in first-person mode. I still could have used the method. I just should have been in first-person mode, clicking on the buttons. This, however, I don't have an opportunity to transfer fuels this way in IVA mode. I did ask around a friend of mine in the Kerbal community if there was a way, and he mentioned that there is a way using the KOS mod, and that is so far above my head. That is actual programming of rocket flights and things like that. So unfortunately, it's going to be a little bit before I can implement that mod to do stuff like this, transferring fuels, but that does sound very interesting. I have been playing around with the idea that maybe a series that I could try at some point would be maybe like a KOS only series, see if I can just learn the program well enough to automate. So now it is time to move our engineer over, our first engineer. So I go through the docking port, but unfortunately because they are from, one is a stock docking port and one is from a mod, they do connect, but it did not allow me to pass through. So we are in fact going to have to spacewalk this. So we get our engineer out, and then I remember that there is actually indeed an airlock on this and not just straight out to EVA. Fun little touch. It's nice. So we are going to get an engineer out, and then I decided rather than another engineer, which would bring us up to 4, we're actually going to get a secondary pilot. In case, anything happens to Valentina, I don't want to think about it, knock on wood, but if anything happens to Valentina, we are going to need a pilot to bring them home. And unfortunately, it does mean risking more Kerbals out there, but it may prove in our favor. Hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully it is a waste of space, and Lars Kerman could be like, well, I didn't really do anything, and that would be great. But he is our emergency backup. He was a 0-star pilot until this mission. Now he is a 1-star because he's made it to orbit, but by the time he joins the crew and they make it interplanetary, he's going to be on his way to being a particularly powerful pilot and capable of handling the dangers ahead. So we're slowly bringing ourselves to the door at the bottom of the craft. There is one on the top, but I can never seem to find it. It would actually be so easy if I did know where it is, because then I could just head from the Alcor right to the top. No wasted effort, but instead we have to come around from the other side. And so I thought we would be able to have a bit of an advantage over the KXP crowd. I was assuming that I was just going to do the refueling off camera the way that I did before, which would give us more time in the episode to then head to Eve, to head interplanetary, either make the full capture or at least get ourselves into rendezvous of it and get eyes on it. But I realized that by blowing through the rendezvous in the last episode, it did kind of rob part of the mission, because that is a crucial part of it. And I did just do essentially the same thing as I did here. I hopped into IVA mode, hit auto ascent, and then I hit auto rendezvous, just let it do its thing, did the Matt Lown method, and so I realized, I'm like, well, that's nothing to write home about. But after thinking it over, after the video came out, I'm like, I could have done a little better there. So that's why I decided to include it into this one, which unfortunately did lose our advantage because of the fact that we could have been out at Eve or on our way to Eve by now. Means that we are once again back in the normal swing of things, where KXP has the advantage simply because they started the series first. But the good news is, I've mentioned before, we only have 2 celestial bodies to visit, Eve and Gilly. So once we finish that, then we will be ready to move on to the next planet. So I come out here, decide to try to take a shot for posterity, but I can't seem to line it up correctly. I can't get enough of a view of everything, and I don't want to risk flying out too far and losing Lars before we even get him aboard. So we are just going to go ahead, rein that back in, and just use whatever we can. One of these days I should get a shot of a Kerbal attached to the door over there from that camera, that little security camera, hull cam. That'd be fun. But once again, we move ourselves carefully over to the door, tapping on the board button to hopefully just automatically pop in. And we do. It's nice. There is no ladder on the door, so doing something like that is helpful. Go ahead and get Lars into his seat as the pilot seat. Zalul is just an engineer, and she has probably the highest stupidity out of any Kerbal in the agency, so she is not going to be in control of our craft. So we're going to go ahead and put her up here in the engineer spot, mainly with some visuals and numbers, not too much to handle. But the great thing is she has also the highest courage out of anyone in the agency. So we know that if things go wrong, we can rely on her to do the stuff that no one wants to. If someone needs to go on a suborbital spacewalk, we're covered. But now we switch back over to the Alcor pod, and then the Kerbals suddenly realize that there's no pilot because of the fact that we made the last minute decision to take the pilot instead of the second engineer. Thomden Kerman is going to have to take over, and he is certainly not trained for such an action. So we are going to have to rely on the Alcor's advanced technology. It is the most advanced IVA that we have, although I will actually take that back because I think there's a few of the near future that are a little bit better. But nonetheless, it is highly advanced, lots of controls, lots of information to be found here. So we're going to go ahead and get our screens as well as we can, and then undock. I don't know why we don't have a docking port camera. That would have been nice, but nonetheless, a successful undock. We switch back to the correct craft, correct view, and we just push ourselves away with a little RCS. I should have gotten my camera up first so I could see that it was indeed the correct direction that we were going, but nonetheless, worked out really well. So we say goodbye to the crew, Valentina and the space plane, and we are going to go ahead and bring ourselves back home. I want to just make sure real fast that our fuel is indeed full, completely topped off, both liquid fuel and monopropellant, because if there was any missing, we could, bring the refueling craft back. So now, since he's not trained to bring this craft home, he is actually going to just hit the auto land button. Would have been better if he hit it in a different spot. We are going to end up coming back in the dark because of, well, as you can see here, we are entering the dark. But nonetheless, the craft takes over. Thomden doesn't have to do anything. It just fires the engine, brings us into a much more ballistic trajectory than I would have done, but regardless, we have our trajectory. So now what he can do is flip the stage button and separate the lower part of the craft from the upper. Don't know why that didn't work. It was interesting. So flip it again, and as we do, we see that it did successfully separate the landing part from the fueling part. But now we have to figure out how to get our heat shield up and deployed, and not a single one of the action groups worked. The eggheads back there at the VAB decided to rush this job so much that they didn't even program the action group to inflate the very necessary heat shield, because without that heat shield, this craft will explode. They will die, and it will be a tragedy. You can't start off the Eve mission with a tragedy here. So Thomden does some quick thinking, and we remember our rule that if we need to right-click on something apart to change it, like our thrust limiter and stuff, all we have to do is get an engineer out there. We are on a suborbital trajectory. We've got about 20 seconds until we hit our apoapsis, and then once we do, we will be coming back down. The craft is heavier than the Kerbal, so it will be moving exponentially faster as we go along. Thankfully, that heat shield didn't hit me with enough force. I was far enough away, but there was a very real chance that that was about to send me flying off into space. Our re-entry is 110 seconds left, and like I mentioned, this is going to be speeding up as we get closer and closer because it's going to be affected by gravity much more, so we cannot dawdle, nor can we hit this at a wrong angle. Thankfully, I grabbed it just in time, but if we had not, that would have sent us spinning, and it would have taken a long time to get control, and we would have been holding a memorial for Thomden Kerban. Thankfully, both he and Shelbus will be safe enough from this heat shield. It is a large, it expands, so as you can see from the camera, it actually takes up more of a circumference than the craft does. Oh, the ground proximity warning. I wish that it would go off for a little bit and then stop, just let you know, like, hey, you're about to hit, and then be done. But no, it just goes off the entire time, so we're going to turn that off. We now crossed the dusk line, the sunset, and we are now going to be in the dark for the rest of this mission. Unfortunately, I was hoping that we could get something nice to see, but we're going to kind of focus more on some of the screens and the numbers, but there will be a little bit of fire effects as we come down. If I want to get up a screen, I don't have a good landing camera, but this does give me the information of how fast I'm going and what altitude we are currently at. So, with nothing else left to do, Thomden just buckles up, tells a joke to Shelbus to get him laughing, and then they both get ready for the re-entry. And this is the first time that it actually been in Shelbus's point of view. There was no real need to be in this capsule because this was just holding the Kerbals meant to go over. But nonetheless, it's pretty cool. You get a little bit of a view, but not really a great one because of the heat shield covers most of the window. We do get some lighting effect from the Firefly re-entry effects, some red, but not a lot. We're not really coming in at too fast of a speed. We had a pretty low trajectory here. We don't have a lot of weight. I mean, there's not a lot of space to see because the heat shield takes up so much room, like I mentioned before. But nonetheless, we are past the heat, so we are safe from burning up, which is always good to see in the Alcor. Go ahead and pop on the vessel view so we have some kind of idea that the parachutes did indeed deploy, which is nice. Unfortunately, because of the fact that we have no action groups, it also means that we can't jettison our heat shield, which means that when we land, we are going to be taking all that weight with us as well, which is unfortunate. I need to, when I make these quick refueling missions, even if I want to just throw it through without a care in the world, I do need to care about my action groups, at least in POV. So we passed the 1,500 kilometer mark, which is typically when I like to have my parachute stage, and I start freaking out because now we are at the 700 mark. But thankfully, they open up in time, but we are actually still moving very quickly. 450 meters above the surface, we drop down to about 8.12 meters per second velocity. Drops down to 7.9, which is still not good. On solid ground, we could actually blow up our lower piece. Thankfully, it is the heat shield that will blow up instead of the crew capsule, but it's still not great. And then that's when I get a bit of good news, is we're landing in water, which means that we have a much higher threshold for crash tolerance. So everyone is safe and happy. We're going to go ahead and recall them. They both get a level and some ribbons. We head back to Valentina to take control of the mission. She had a nice little rest, nice little nap, but is ready to move forward. And so are we. In the next episode of KXP, we're heading to Jewel, but in the next episode of POV right here, we are going to be heading straight to Eve. There's no need to stop by any other planet. And since we'll be able to start right at the beginning of the episode, that means that we are going to be able to dedicate the entire episode to our Eve approach. I'm not sure where I want to go first, if I want to aero brake at Eve and then try to head over to Gilly, or if I should attempt an Eve landing first and hopefully be able to ascend afterwards. So let me know in the comments below if you have any suggestions. But anyways, that's where I'm going to leave today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're looking forward for more of the Eve program. If you did think about subscribing, drop me a like, let me know your thoughts, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.